Hey, Liron here. Grab a cup of coffee. This is going to be a bit of a longer one. Today, I want to share with you 12 principles or insights that have helped me continuously grow my watercolor skills over the past decade. Okay, so these are pretty big ones that I think anyone would benefit from marinating on, right? I'm not saying I have the right answers, but these are ones I found pretty useful if you want to continue growing. So let's get to it. Number one, the selfish artist has more fun. So let me explain it to you because I always like to use the word selfish and I totally mean it in a good way, okay? And that is when you're able to tune everything out and simply listen to yourself and to your own artistic desires, okay? That's when you follow your weird little passion subject matter. That's me painting cars. No one has ever said, yes, please do more. Well, some people have said, please do more car paintings, but it's a minority, and I'm super grateful for you know who you are. Very select few. But I'm still doing it, and I'm still filming a lot of a variety of videos and tutorials, and I'm sweating, and a bunch of stuff just with cars as a demo, as a byproduct of me loving the way light and shadow kind of reflect on cars. That's just how I like my light and shadow conditions. I really enjoy that kind of a thing, right? So if you follow that weird thing, you know, the more of a weird subject matter you have for your favorite, the better I think you're connected to what you actually enjoy painting. And this is kind of the first point, okay? So you can feel free to follow your weird passion, paint that weird subject. It's just more fun. And if you continuously are having fun and you become curious and you want to explore the subject matter fully, guess what? That leads to better results. So that would be my first point, my first insight. Let's do another one. And that is, I would say, vision is more important than anything else. And that connects to my previous point. In a way, if you don't automatically, without effort, have a vision for how you want to portray a scene, it's probably not the right scene to paint. Now, let me give a caveat, right? Maybe you want to paint something because it will benefit you technically. It's something you've wanted to kind of try and see what kind of result you'll get. Maybe you're doing a master study following someone else's process, and you end up painting something you aren't necessarily that passionate about, but it helps you expose your technical weaknesses, right? That's what I always say. You do a master study of someone, and it's one of the best things you can do just to recognize technical weakness, because you're going to see immediately what you got wrong compared to the original, right? Maybe your edges are totally off and you haven't gotten the nuances, right? Maybe the values are wrong, maybe the colors are wrong. The whole spectrum, right? If you really struggle with like, why don't my paintings look good? Make a master study. Trust me on this one. Make a master study of something simple. It doesn't have to be hard. Pick an artist you kind of like and do even just a smaller, simpler version of their painting. You will be exposed to your weaknesses, and it's black on white. You can see it. So, but for the vast majority of cases, vision and painting something you actually have some kind of a passion for will bring out a better result. Just automatically. You will know what to do. I don't know if you've ever had this experience before. Maybe you have had it once, maybe twice, maybe you've had it a lot of times. I have it almost every time I paint. I don't need a plan, and I'm going to talk about that in a couple of minutes here. I don't need a plan, because my vision is the plan. My vision carries out the plan. I have a picture in my mind, and it's not a literal picture. I know a lot of people say, Liron, I can't really imagine stuff in my head. You'd be surprised to hear I'm not good at it too. What I am good at is rotating three-dimensional stuff, simple objects. I'm not good at envisioning an entire scene. But I have some kind of a vague, soft picture in my mind. Very loose. And that's the thing that leads me. And don't forget, your vision is always in reaction to the reference photo. You, the artist, you're the secret sauce, right? Your reaction to the reference is what makes art. So it's always, you can always look at the thing and sharpen your vision, as long as the thing actually inspires you. And this is why it's so important. If something doesn't bring that naturally in you, don't fight it. Don't try and muster up the vision and make yourself like it. Just forget about it. Not as important, Move on to the next reference photo or the next subject matter. A good hack, if you want to, and we're going to talk about a similar point towards the end of this video. Principle 12 is awesome, the last one, so keep an eye out for that. A hack, a possible solution is paint things that are close to you emotionally, right? Don't go out there and find a random view. Paint the view from your window. Don't look up a portrait picture online. Paint someone you love. Paint someone you're familiar with, because there are going to go into it, all kinds of things are going to go into it that would not have otherwise. And I can share something interesting. I get a lot of painting critiques now. A lot of people are sending me their paintings to critique. It's a new service I started. If you want yours critiqued, I'm going to put a link below. First link in the description box. Get your paintings critiqued. I'm going to talk about the benefits later on. But it's almost always the case that the best, absolute best paintings that someone sends to me are those that have someone they're familiar with, someone they care for, a friend, a family, a pet, and you can always see it. And I always tell them, you see how you got this one looking really, really good? Interesting, right? It's interesting is when you go for a subject matter you're familiar with, you care about, the result is better. Just the mere extra effort you put into it. And I don't mean effort in the sense of hard work, effort in the sense of focus, engagement with the process, things that happen naturally. Nothing happens in art by force. So that's a hack for you, right? You can always go for a subject matter that's very familiar to you. Look around your room. What are you seeing? Do you have any interesting trinkets? Do you have anything that invokes strong memories for maybe a vacation you've gone through, to a picture of a loved one? That will always create a better vision. Let's talk about point number 3. Now, I don't even think words can convey how important it is, but I'm going to try. Simplicity almost always wins. And what I mean by that is a painting is an experience. I want the person who views my painting, I want to give them an amazing experience on a silver platter. I want to spoon feed them that experience. A painting, it's much more important for it to actually be simple and clear than for it to be accurate. Now, there's nothing wrong with accuracy, but if that's your guiding light, you are very likely to miss out on the thing that makes it an experience for the viewer. So think of someone like Alvaro Castanet. His biggest passion, it seems, is to convey what he's seeing in a bold manner, in a direct manner. He said it multiple times, I don't care about painting pretty pictures. What I care about is painting the reality the way I see it. And he edits everything for what he said, maximum impact. For, the best composition, the best colors, the best contrasts, the best nuances. He really digs deep on those things. Another good example is Qian-Chung Wei, who does a fantastic job in his compositions. It's always interesting. He always breaks the patterns. There's always unequal distances between different elements. And the reason he does that is all he really cares about, in a way, it seems, is to provide something fascinating to the viewer. And I can make an interesting parallel. If you look at manga, right, the Japanese comics, one of the biggest ideas in the industry is if it's interesting, it's gonna sell. And what authors care about there, and they have crazy work ethics, is make the story interesting. Nothing else matters. As long as the story and the characters and everything is interesting, that's what matters. And you can view painting in the same way. Now, it might sound like a bit of a paradox. On the one hand, be selfish, paint what you love. On the other hand, have the viewer in mind. It's not really a paradox as long as you follow point 8 that I'm going to get to later on, principle 8. Now that I think about it, it connects nicely. It's not a paradox. You can, and not only can you, that's the only way to create something great, is when you follow your vision, when you're selfish, and when you give the viewer the amazing experience on a silver platter. And that's what I find. The more I paint, the more I drop, the more complexities I ignore, the more things I try and make streamlined, not for simplicity's sake, but to make something that sings in harmony together. Maybe a bit of a vague concept. Hopefully, if it lands, it lands. If it's not, feel free to disregard and discard. Point number 4, that's a bit more of a straightforward one. Values equals realism. Get a realistic feel. You pretty much just need to nail the values. The colors can do their thing, and we'll talk about it in a moment. Values, how dark or light something is what's ultimately responsible for realism. So if you feel like your paintings don't read well, they're not clear enough, and they don't feel realistic, values is what you want to go after. You might want to try and paint a few monochromatic works to see, about going back to our point about master studies, am I even able to match the value I'm seeing? Am I even able to paint things as dark or as light as they need to be? Do I notice the nuances in the darker half of the value scale, which is a very big challenge for many, myself included, right? What's a 10 out of 10? What's an 8 out of 10 versus a 7 out of 10 value? What's a 9 or an 8? These things get trickier, and you can open up Photoshop or any other image software and look at that last kind of 30% of the value scale, the darkest ones. The nuances there are very interesting, and that's, I think, one thing where oil painters tend to excel inherently. They are able to portray that darker half of the value scale. Now, some people have trouble with the lighter side, don't get me wrong. Everyone has their own troubles. Some people have more unique troubles. I tend to fall into that category, going too dark, of course, rather than being scared to paint dark enough. But the point is this: values is what gives realism. So if you struggle with realism, values might very well be your weakness. And that brings us to the next principle, which is kind of similar. Colors are responsible for emotions and atmosphere. So if all you care about is realism, that's cool, but most painters want the whole thing, right? And I cared a lot about realism in many steps and stages of my art career over the past 11 years by now. I mean, I've been creating ever since I was a little kid, but really seriously, professionally, it's been about 11 years. So if you care about the whole picture, right, you want to be able to show the viewer what the atmosphere is, to really take them into the story. Who's a master of that, right? Joseph Zbukvich, huge master of that. And he does have a variety of atmospheres. If you look at his fields, if you look at his cityscapes, if you look at a rainy day, when you look at someone like, there are plenty of artists that just have that. August Sandstrom. There are plenty of art, and his is more of the wintry type of views, right? And that's a strong atmosphere too. So ultimately, if you care about atmosphere and feeling and emotion, colors are your best friend. And in fact, if you're a master of colors, you don't have to rely as much on values, but rather everything falls into place. Because guess what? Contrast is not just in values. Contrast is another word for difference. Contrast, a difference of values, light to dark, a difference of temperatures, cold to warm, a difference of hues, red, yellow, green, blue, purple, violet, whatever, right? Contrast can come in many forms. It can come in the form of shapes. Large shape versus small shape. So, if you're a master of colors, and there are a couple of artists that come to mind that I don't even remember their names, but I follow them on Instagram, that are absolute masters of color, you don't even have to vary your values as much. You can, and it all has a part. It all feeds into the end result. And what does this all go back to? It goes back to your vision as an artist. Because whatever vision you have, whatever it is, you could be more interested in strong value contrast. Or you could be more interested in fascinating color combinations. Whatever it is, if you paint it selfishly and follow your vision, automatically all of the components are going to work out. Okay? So that brings us to insight number 6. Pencil lines are sometimes a hindrance. That's something I learned in recent years. Just having pencil lines on your piece of paper changes the way you see things. It affects it. It changes your expectations, your actions, your vision. And some, myself included, might really benefit from having fewer to none pencil lines on paper. And you've seen some of my alla prima processes. If you're a member of the Watercolor Realism course, you have also seen what is probably my best painting process to date. And that is a very, very, very strong component of just painting the scene directly with no pencil line. So if there's a more general insight, it would be you almost have to find what works for you. And what works for you might or might not be the thing that works for me or for anyone else. I have discovered 100% that I often, not always, have more fun going for it directly. I have more fun and I feel more expressive, and the results are different when I have no pencil lines. So it's one thing to have in mind. Maybe the next time you try and paint something, it feels a little, what is that? Pencil lines and drawing in general, they have their role. And by the way, I don't mind pencil lines when there's no paint over them too. I'm a big fan of seeing the pencil lines in the paintings. That's not my issue, just to make it clear. I don't care. Sometimes I scribble a tree over the sky and I end up not painting the tree. So there's the sky and scribbles of pencil. I don't care about those. Those don't bug me. What I am saying is the mere existence of those pencil lines change the way I paint. So the result of the painting, the watercolor bit, changes. And that's where you want to be a little careful. Okay? So there are a lot of these little factors you can play around with and see what works for you. Let me give you another quick bonus one for this point. Standing up versus sitting down. Some people will just end up being naturally more expressive when they stand up to paint. One of those things, it just happens, the time of day you paint. There's a lot of these little quirks. Find yours, find whatever works for you. But I can definitely say that pencil lines are sometimes a hindrance to me. They are useful and valuable when you have a big painting, big composition, very hard to track where to paint stuff. Then it has its role for sure. Principle number 7. Materials don't matter as much as one might think, right? And I only need to give you one example, and that is Missulbu here on YouTube, Misulbu. Probably the most technically proficient painter I've ever witnessed, especially with a very difficult subject matter, portraits. I have never seen anyone come really close to Missulbu's work in terms of control. And Missulbu uses student grade paints. A lot of them. Really cheap ones. Sometimes even cheap paper. Just look at the result they're getting. That's all I really have to say about that. Now, it's true that really bad materials can work against you. But I think if you learn to master the materials, they won't cause an issue. Now, I'm all for getting a good, high-quality cotton paper, but I have painted masterpieces on other types of paper, on pulp paper, on not 100% cotton paper. Now, I absolutely hated some papers that I tried out and tested, and that's fine. Discard what doesn't work for you. Some textures you won't like, right? The paper may be good, but the texture is annoying to you. There's a lot of factors involved, but look at Missulbu. Materials aren't nearly as important as people make them out to be. And not to mention, materials we have today are far more high quality than what artists had in the past. Think 100, 200 years ago. And they still made masterpieces. Okay, now, not always. Some materials were quality, have been quality for centuries, but some weren't, right? Watercolors especially weren't. Let's move on to insight number 8. Instinct usually wins over a plan. So there is something in spontaneity and in reacting rather than planning that brings out something special in the art. And I actually have an interesting example from a different area of life. One of the most fun things I've ever tried out was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I quit at some point because I dislocated my patella, which was very fun, and I was too scared to go back. Not only too scared, I have so many responsibilities, I don't feel like being injured, honestly. And a lot of people have much worse injuries and they go back to it like champs because it's important enough for them. For me, it probably wasn't. But it was one of the most fun things I've ever tried. And I've done it for a couple of months, right? And the most fun I've had is in relying on my instincts and reacting to what the person you're basically sparring with does. Now, I was terrible, right? But I have had so much fun trying to read their movements and then reacting to them. Even when I would end up flat on the ground, choked, pancaked, whatever, it still was very fun to utilize that very natural human resource. Now, we have developed brains. We are built to plan ahead, to think ahead, to build shelter, to grow grain, to go through the Industrial Revolution, to go through all of these things. However, a big part of our brains, not big physically necessarily, but a major part of it is still quite primal and enjoys just being set free, not thinking about anything, not planning anything, and going with mere instinct. And that is the part that is utilized in this kind of painting. And to me, almost always when I paint something that speaks to me, I don't need the plan. I don't need the process. I really just need to jump into it. Some people will say, it's your experience, it's your, the fact you've been doing it for so long, you practice, blah, blah, blah. If I look at my paintings from 7, 8, 9 years ago, there are still standout paintings that I had no business painting back then that I can definitely remember I painted exactly like that. It was this way, and they still hold up to today. How does that happen? How can this kind of thing happen? I look at some of my first paintings. I was not gifted. I have been sketching and drawing ever since I was a little kid, here and there, I've had some kind of understanding of three-dimensionality and perspective, but I wasn't gifted in watercolor, and not at all. I struggled with them. I had trouble with them. One of my biggest issues was just getting the brush to leave the mark I wanted. I'd have such a hard time painting inside shapes, right? But one thing I know for certain is when you allow yourself, and you can't force it, you can't make a plan to allow yourself, it has to happen. Just has to happen. I don't know how. I have no answer for you. But when you're able to just let go and let that instinct carry you, by the way, one thing that helps for me is to put stuff on paper almost before I'm prepared and then look at them and then react. That reaction with instinct is a huge pleasure and joy. And 99% of people who paint don't experience it ever because they're too scared. And they have to have their little fragile plan held up in place. And they have to know before they start a wash, is it going to be wet and wet? Is it going to be wet and dry? What are the exact colors I'm going to use? Blah, 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 blah. I've shown you dozens of videos where I don't premix the paint I'll need, the exact one, where I put nonsense on paper and then I push it in the right direction. Because I follow my gut and my instinct and very limited mixing experience. So you can tell me that it's all about the experience and it's all about the talent. You can tell me whatever you want. But if you just give it some thought, you might discover it's a tool you have at your disposal too. So would you rather be righteous, or would you rather just test it out and discover that you can right now, pause this video and go paint a masterpiece with complete freedom, relying on your instinct. Which one would you rather do? Is the question I'm going to leave you with for insight number 8. Let's move on to insight number 9. And it kind of is related. Most things work best when they are delegated to instinct and experience. What do I mean by that? Think of something like knowledge of pigment properties. Opaque, transparent. How do I use this? How do I use that? When's the ideal time to bring out the most transparent, the least staining, the most staining? You can theorize and talk about it all day long. But what's really going to serve you in your painting process is if you allow experience to do the job for you. And what I mean by that is you experiment, you play around with a large variety of colors, and you learn on a very deep gut experiential level what happens before you do the action. That's a very common experience. You can almost expect what's going to happen. If you watched One Piece, you get this hockey thing, the emperors, I think, I don't remember. There's a guy there, I think it's called Katakuri. You can tell what's going to happen, and Zoro does that too, and Luffy does that too. You can almost know and perceive what's going to happen. When I look at someone else's painting process who's very experienced and expert, I know what mark their brush is going to leave on paper. And also when I look at someone inexperienced, or when I look at a student, right? You get this sense of what's going to happen. These things work best when they're delegated to visceral experience. Let me give you another example. Brush control, right? How to leave a specific mark, something I just told you I struggled with to no end when I was getting started. This is big. This is big. If you try and be clever about it and try and plan for it, usually it won't work. What will work is just playing around with the brush, seeing what marks it leaves, and with time, and within a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of days, maybe a couple of months, you're so intuitively tuned that you know exactly what mark the brush is going to leave, and it's very easy for you to fill in a shape with one swipe of the brush. You don't have to fill in like a coloring book, right? This is huge, and most things are best delegated to instinct and experience. The reason I have both instinct and experience is instinct is what you have when you have nothing. Experience is something that develops with time and becomes a part of your instinct. Okay. Another good example is timing of wet and how the paint is going to react. Another thing. Okay. Insight number 10. A plan is okay and is welcomed in some cases. So very often, I will have a general plan for a painting. It's more of a vague, abstract plan. I don't usually plan well in advance. The first wash is going to be this. The second wash is going to be that. It's always a reaction. Remember this word, reaction. Have it in mind. Repeat after me, reaction. It's always reaction to what I'm seeing the water and the paint doing, right? So, in some cases, a plan is useful if you have a very large painting, a very complex painting. You might want to devote a couple of moments before you start a wash to just figuring out what are you going to paint? What are you going to fill in? A good example of that is the huge commission painting I did last year. I believe it was last year, yes, of that snowy landscape, snowy mountain landscape. That was a huge painting, 1 meter over 2.5 meters. Big piece, of course, it requires some plan, but within that plan, I still paint with freedom. So when I start painting the wash or start painting the detail, I'm no longer in the plan. The plan got me to stand in front of the detail and know, okay, detail, I'm going to paint you. But once I get started painting that detail, the plan is no longer in my mind. I'm done. I'm just going to paint it according to my vision. And remember, you don't have a vision. What do you do if it doesn't inspire you? How can you tackle it? You don't. You just move forward unless someone pays you a lot of money, for example, which I'm super fortunate because my commissions are things I enjoy painting. So far, they've almost always been like that. But if by some chance you got a commission that pays you really well. Price in your pain. That's a side tip for the business side of things. Price in your pain so that you will get a vision because someone's paying you a lot of money for it. Just saying. I'm at a point where I'm fortunate enough to just say no to such commissions. So every single painting I've done so far inspired me. Very happy to say that. But a plan is okay. But once you paint, once you're there, you're in the action, try and grab that plan, see if you can do that. Probably not really. Let's talk about Insight 11. One of the most important factors to having ongoing, continuous growth in your art is a feedback loop. And I'm dropping here a preview to a new course I'm working on. And I will update you. It's a not a soon to be finished project because I have a big project before that for a new club I'm launching. So keep an eye out for that. But this is a preview for a 4-letter system I'm working on developing that basically fills in a huge hole that everyone has. If you've ever watched tutorials and tried painting and practiced every day and did workshops and you're still not getting the results you want, how can that be? How can that be that you're still making the same mistakes months later? Well, this upcoming course will address just that. No one talks about these things. No one. Everyone gives you the technique, gives you the process, gives you the demo, and then good luck. I will share with you, going to be in the far future, but 4 really strong concepts that will lead to your watercolor breakthrough. The 4 keys to a watercolor breakthrough. One of them is a feedback loop. If you have a feedback loop going, what's going to happen is you'll paint something, you'll know why it's not working, and the next time you paint something, it's going to be better. It might be the same, it might be worse, but over a long period of time, the trend will always be upward. And that is done with a feedback loop. I was super fortunate to be filming myself painting right from the beginning. When you film yourself painting and you edit those videos, you see yourself painting again and again and again, you start noticing patterns. You start looking at an older video and you're seeing, I used to do that differently, and that's why I felt at XYZ factor, whatever. I somehow managed to build a feedback loop for myself, and you can do it for yourself. But an alternative to struggling all on your own is to get someone else with more experience to do that for you. And this is where my critiques come in. And this single insight was the idea, the impetus, is that the right word, for this entire video. Because I really wanted to share it with you. It's huge. A feedback loop is huge. Having someone to be able to get the insights from. That could be someone you trust, like a friend, a colleague, but usually you want to also do it with someone who's preferably 2 decades ahead of you, maybe a single decade ahead of you, that has experience and can finally point at the things that you haven't even noticed you've been doing wrong, and it destroys your painting. Let me give you a good example. A client of mine sent me just recently a couple of paintings for a critique. They sent me another painting a week after I sent them the critique. We talked about the insights. I sent them an actual video. The next painting they sent me a couple of days later, a week later, was 100 times better. Immediately. You can struggle with something for an entire year. And then one night you get it. One night it clicks. Because growth happens in spurts. That's just how it is. An insight clicks immediately. Now, you can spend 5 years and go through the trial and error, go through, the struggles. I've done some of that too. Or you can cut off that time frame, shave years off your learning curve. And that's why I offer critiques. So check it out. First link in the description box below. Very simple premise. You send me up to 3 paintings and the references if available. And I send you a video, personal, just for you, where I go in deep nerdy details about what I'm seeing that could be improved, what I'm seeing that you're doing wrong, what you're not noticing, where the colors are off, where the values are off, where the compositions could be way better, and perhaps more importantly, what is unique about you? What are the things that maybe you want to preserve? Because everyone has a natural handwriting, something you don't want to lose, and so many beginners lose it. That's why you have hundreds of Joseph Zbukvic copycats. Those are all wasted potential for people who could have, had they had better guidance, whether it's themselves or someone else, discover their full potential. Everyone has that. And the reason why you have an artist like Zbukvic be so good, you'll look at his paintings and it's unmistakable. It's because he discovered his own unique handwriting and then did hell of a work refining it for decades. That's how it happens. The thing that gets you to see an artist on Instagram and immediately follow is when they discover that thing. And you can immediately tell it's almost like a piece of their art that is completely divine. It's just, you can't explain it. You have to follow. You have to see more. Maybe not even immediately, but you're like, I want to see more from that artist. That is in discovering and preserving and honing. And then the rest, the technical skills can be improved, can be talked about all day long. But sometimes you want to make sure you preserve the unique thing about your art. Everyone has that. Even if you can't point to exactly what it is, and not always will you be able to, a lot of the times you can. A lot of the times that's something I will fight tooth and nail to preserve in a student because it's really, really important. And it speaks for itself. The results speak for themselves. Check it out. Very simple. Send me 3 paintings. Don't overthink it. Send me 3 paintings. Get a video back. It's just gonna save you years of effort. Want to get into a juried show, if you want to be accepted, if you want to win a competition, if you want to sell your paintings, just think about your fullest potential. You can get there. And I'm here to inspire you to get there. I'm really not here to impart like my beliefs on you, my techniques on you. I don't have anything to convince you of. Do whatever you want. I'm here, if I can, to inspire 1, 2, 3, 10 people to find their maximum potential. So that is arguably one of the more important points here, feedback loop. You want to start a feedback loop. You don't have to go with my service. Find an artist whose style you love and who you want to be where they are, and you trust their word that they're not going to just say, yeah, paint with more freedom. This is specific stuff we're talking about. This is not child's play. And go with that, Find your favorite creator. It doesn't even have to be a watercolorist. Find someone that can do that for you. The price is, time. What's more expensive than time? Nothing. So paint the watercolors you want, watercolors that feel like you, in 6 months instead of 6 years. Or better yet, in 6 months rather than never. Have you thought of that option? Some people are there, I get emails. I see it. People are depressed. It's really sad. People are depressed and it's a prison of their own making. So don't do that. Don't. It's not worth it. Insight number 12. Painting is easy as long as you see it for what it is. And this is something that's been connected for me in the past 12 months. Painting is simple action. What you're doing is putting paint on paper. The technique, the form, the process, the work order, these things have an effect on the result, but ultimately they don't matter. What matters is you simply put paint to paper. You have your vision, you put the paint down, and trust me, you don't need technique. What you need is something that inspires you. You need inspiration. If you have that inspiration, if you have that vision, things will connect. And I've seen some of people enrolled in my courses, by the way, not even one-on-one or critiques. They send me once in a while like a painting, and I look at it, I'm like, wow, that's leaps and bounds beyond your normal thing. Whenever that kind of a thing happens to you, you paint something that is just complete standout. That's when you want to stop, observe it, remember what it felt like to paint it. That's the feeling. That is the feeling. And I don't paint to chase that feeling. And that's the thing. If you chase that feeling, you won't get it. I paint because I'm compelled to paint. I enjoy it. I love it. I don't think about anything when I paint, right? It's a byproduct. And it's not a byproduct you can chase. But that feeling can and will lead to more of the same high quality of painting that you've created for this one unique example. If you have just one, it means you can do it for every painting. So these are some of my biggest 12 insights from the past 10 to 11 years, give or take, of painting that have been a major contributor to my continuous growth in watercolor. Something like just me filming myself painting, that was a thing I wasn't even planning to do in order to improve, and it worked, right? So I got lucky in that regard. I've had a feedback loop for a decade now. I keep seeing myself working. I can pull up a video from 5, 6, 7 years ago, see what's working, what's not working. I can do that at any given moment. I have a library of like 50% of my paintings are documented there being painted. Maybe less, maybe more, hard to say. These are huge. You will not remember any of these probably by the end of the video, maybe one or two that stuck with you. Those are probably the ones you want to marinate on. And then in a week, in a month, revisit this video, see if something else clicked. Now, do me a favor, write down in a comment below which one was maybe the most impactful to you. You can scroll through the timestamps and you'll get a preview of like every one on the bottom of the screen. I'm curious to hear. It will be great feedback for me to understand what kind of vibed and meshed really well with you. And with that, I will thank you. I will recommend you check out the critiques. I'm going to put the first link below, separate from all the rest. Get your paintings critiqued. And I do want to thank everyone who supports me over on Patreon. If you want to receive credits at the end of the videos, that's how you get them. These people I am super duper grateful for. I don't provide much in return. The occasional exclusive process. This is mostly people who just want to support me. And I'm super grateful for all of you. So thank you so much. And I will see you in the next video. Till next time.